We are systems engineers from the United States Military Academy at West Point. I'm Cadet Nathan Williams, here with Cadets Tim Garner and Hannah Keely. At the beginning of the year, we were given a mission by Major General David Alvin of the U.S. European Command to recommend candidate solutions that address reducing the risk of refugee radicalization in the EUCOM area of responsibility. CNN estimated that so far in 2016, 162,563 migrants have entered Europe from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Furthermore, from January to May this year, there have been numerous asylum applications into countries with the EUCOM sector. Today, many European countries fear radicalized refugees streaming into their countries. The United States also fears refugees and their threat to American national security as refugees attempt to move from Europe to the United States. It has been acknowledged that while constructing candidate solutions, the solutions may not be purely military. However, the solution must be within the boundaries of EUCOM capabilities, either directly or indirectly. After much research and analysis, our group identified that undocumented immigrants must be kept out of EUCOM, while humanitarian aid must be provided to sustain immigrants while they attempt to enter Europe through legal means. In summation, our group was able to identify 3 candidate solutions. Our first candidate solution is to empower independent, non-government organizations, or NGOs. The second is to create an asylum screening process while providing funds for humanitarian assistance directly to the EU. Our third is to provide humanitarian aid and security through NATO using U.S. troops on the ground.
The first solution is that EUCOM provides funding support to non-governmental organizations that supply refugees for the following items: food, water, shelter, medicine, and education. Fabio Fragione from Médecins Sans Frontières said, although aid was quickly deployed at the start of the crisis and many organizations are still present, it needs to be maintained. Freed access to healthcare and humanitarian assistance must be reinforced for Syrian refugees. Lack of these essentials in education can cause refugees to become radicalized, and in many cases, they have no other option. If we support NGOs that provide humanitarian aid, we can eliminate the initial risk of refugees radicalizing by giving them an opportunity for life and a chance for themselves and their children to be educated. Specifically, we propose supporting NGOs such as Doctors Without Borders, the International Rescue Committee, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, and other such NGOs that are committed to helping the welfare of others. We propose EUCOM fund these organizations that are attempting to improve the living conditions of refugees seeking asylum in Europe. However, these organizations can only use EUCOM funding for the specified items: food, water, shelter, medicine, and education. Furthermore, they cannot use funding to support other organizations that are not essential or do not provide these items. This would not require troops to be deployed in either combat or for humanitarian projects. The downsides to this option is that EUCOM cannot aid in security, leaving NGOs to ensure their own security. Furthermore, not every dollar given to NGOs would go directly to the refugees, for only 70 to 80% of every dollar actually reaches refugee efforts, while the rest goes to salaries for the NGOs. It is also very difficult to verify that NGOs are properly using the allotted funds, for they do not fall under EUCOM, and therefore do not have to directly answer to EUCOM demands. Lastly, this solution would have to pass the State Department, Congress, and the executive branch, which may impact this time-sensitive project. We estimate the solution would cost around $407.5 million every year. It costs $100 million to provide a refugee with food every year, all the refugees' food every year, plus $7.5 million allotted for education and $300 million for housing. This would be the bare minimum cost to provide refugees with the essentials and does not account for all refugees, since the number of refugees are only estimates. Furthermore, EUCOM would have to provide this amount for more than 1 year, which may add up to being costly.
For our second candidate solution, our group proposes that we provide humanitarian aid directly to the EU without deploying EUCOM personnel, while providing intelligence support or attached intelligence personnel to screen refugees for those who might be affiliated with radical movements attempting to enter into Europe. Daniela Keats from Reshaping Europe said, quote, "Screening of refugees coming into Europe is difficult due to its geographic situation. The The EU is much more exposed to irregular migration flows over its external borders." End quote. It is easier for refugees to radicalize if there are radical refugees present. Therefore, it is important to screen refugees that enter into the EU to ensure they will not cause radicalization. The inflow of refugees is extremely susceptible to radicalization because it is simple to seem unradical. However, it will disband large militant groups attempting to cross into Europe. To attempt to catch radical refugees that are trying to disguise themselves as not being radical, EUCOM should gather as much information from neighboring countries on known radicalized personnel. This includes names, photographs, fingerprints, and other identification means to lower the amount of radicals entering Europe. We believe these means of identification can separate those who have a background of known violence or misconduct from entering Europe. In addition, the EU already has an interview process that each refugee must go through. Therefore, EUCOM must send intelligence personnel to help interview potential admits and heads of families to discuss their plans for becoming active members of the European society. No troops would be deployed during the solution. The downside of the solution, however, is that while the United States allocates intelligence resources to aid the EUCOM sector, it is not actively engaging in any other missions pertinent to the United States national security. Furthermore, there would be a slight increase in cost to pay for intelligence and then provide intelligence personnel to aid EUCOM. This would not be too much of a significant cost. This solution would still be time intensive as we go through the government to try to provide financial aid to the EU. On the contrary, it is more likely that the dollar amount that EUCOM provides to the EU be directly used for humanitarian aid. This option would likely be the same cost of the first at around $405 million per year.
Can Solution 3 involves deploying a brigade combat team to Europe to assist with the handling and handing out of food, building shelters and maintaining refugee camps, providing security for NGOs, and allowing for refugees to receive medical aid. This solution will provide intelligence support to the screening process to gain admittance into Europe. However, it would not provide intelligence personnel assistance, only military. Currently, there are 33,000 soldiers assigned throughout Europe from the U.S. Army. A brigade combat team of about 2,000 soldiers would have to undergo the same process as if they were training for a combat deployment in order to be able to provide security. This would include intending NTC as well as training to provide humanitarian aid. Depending on how long the problem continues, EUCOM may have to deploy more than one brigade combat team, as well as supplying the brigades with the necessary humanitarian equipment to satisfy refugee needs. EUCOM could use Army engineers to build infrastructure while using MPs and infantry to provide security to refugee camps and NGOs, as well as pass out food, water, medicine, and other necessities. This may be difficult for EUCOM as they would need the President's approval. In addition, many Americans have often wanted nothing to do with the Syrian crisis, and many may not support deploying troops into Europe. Other limiting factors to the solution are that the United States is still deploying troops to Afghanistan and may not want to expend troops that are not aiding the efforts in the Middle East. While the brigade completes this mission, it is not able to complete any other mission, which could leave the military a brigade down. Lastly, European countries may have issues with the United States military taking over their area of jurisdiction while trying to aid the European refugee effort. We believe the solution would cost roughly $1.2 billion to deploy and maintain a brigade for 1 year overseas. We construed this number from the cost per year it takes to maintain a brigade in Afghanistan, as well as the $407.5 million it costs to provide essential materials to the brigade combat team in order for them to conduct humanitarian practices. In summation, this solution would cost roughly $1.6 billion.
In conclusion, we have found 3 candidate solutions that would contribute to reducing refugee radicalization. The candidate solutions are as follows: funding and supporting NGOs, providing humanitarian aid to the EU, and deploying a brigade combat team to Europe. These solutions all prove as viable options to lessening the risk of refugee radicalization. We believe that implementing these candidate solutions will provide EUCOM with the ability to tackle the many challenges of refugee radicalization. More information regarding our candidate solutions can be found in our previous paper submissions.